Hey guys, Kitchen Table Magician here. Welcome to another episode of 6-Pack of MTG, where we're going to crack 6 packs of Magic cards and build a 40-card sealed deck out of it. The first pack that I crack, I will evaluate as though this were a draft, and this was my first pack in the draft. We'll make a pick out of this, and as usual, leave comments at the bottom if you think I could have or should have picked something different. And today we're going to do Battle for Zendikar. I admittedly am not as familiar with this set as I am with the more recent Kaladesh and Amonkhet sets. As when this came out, I really wasn't playing that much or buying very many cards, but I do know a little something about it. So let's begin. We'll start with pack 1, which looks like it's got Gideon on the front. So let's take a look and see what's in this. Wow, that is really hard to open. Holy cow. That was a stubborn one. All right. So this is Call of the Scions for 3, Devoid, put a couple of Eldrazi Scions onto the battlefield, and they have sack, add this one to your mana pool. Probably not a first pick. Royal Mage's Trick, Converge, creatures your opponent's control get minus X minus 0 to the turn, where X is the number of colors of mana pool, spent oil. Yeah, probably not first pick. Swarm Surge, Devoid, creatures you control get +2/+0 till the end of the turn. Colorless creatures you control also gain first strike. I can see picking this if a little later if you've gotten to go wide with tokens or something. Lava Step Rider, 1-drop, 1/2. It gets +2/+0 till the end of the turn for 3. Again, a little later on to fill your deck out. If you need that 1-drop, it's there for you. Makindi Patrol, 3 mana, 2/3. When it or another ally enters the battlefield under your control, creatures you control gain vigilance. Again, this is a little bit filler for middle of the draft to fill your deck out. Okay, wow, for 7, we have a 7/8. When you cast the Ruin Processor, you may put a card an opponent owns from exile into that player's graveyard, and if you do, gain 5 life. My only problem with this, I mean, this is a big beater, no doubt, but it's so expensive. It's going to be hard to get into unless you can create some way to get mana ramp. So I'm not sure it's a first pick. Skyline Cascade enters the battlefield tapped. When it enters the battlefield, target creature an opponent controls does not untap during its controller's next untap step, and it taps for blue. Not first pickable, but if you get into that control-y, grindy archetype, you know, this could be something to pick up later. Eyeless Watcher, Devoid, 4 mana for a 1/1. When it enters the battlefield, create 2 Eldrazi Scions, and they have sack, add 1 mana to your mana pool. This, I don't think is worth picking either. It's such a little body for so much mana. Yeah, you get a couple of Scions, but I don't think it's worth what you're paying. Rush of Ice, blue for a sorcery. Tap target creature, and it does not untap during its controller's next untap step. Awaken 3. If you cast this spell for its awaken cost of a blue and 4, you put 3+1/+1 counters on a land you control, and it becomes an elemental with haste. That could be a little something, maybe. All right, Silent Skimmer, 4 mana, Devoid, and flying. When it attacks, defending player loses 2 life. So far, this is looking the best to me because it flies, so it has evasion. It does attack, technically for 2 points of damage if it's not blocked. So I will set this aside as a potential first pick. Serene Steward, 2 mana. When you gain life, you may pay white. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on a creature, and it's an ally. If you're getting into that ally strategy, maybe. Spawning Bed, a land, add 1 to your mana pool, or for 6, you can tap this and sack it and then put 3 1/1 Eldrazi Scion creature tokens onto the battlefield. Again, if you're trying to get into something really big, then maybe this be something for you. All right. Windrider Patrol for 5 mana, 4/3, and flying, and when it deals combat damage to a player, scry 2. All right, this is my first pick so far. I would take this over the Skimmer. This is much better so far for this pack. All right, Scatter to the Winds, 3 mana, instant, counter target spell, and it has Awaken. If you cast this spell for the Awaken cost, you may also turn one of your lands into a 3/3 creature, basically. And the Awaken cost is 6. All right, so out of this pack, I'm going to first pick the Windrider Patrol. This is 5 mana for a 4/3 flying, which is really good in a limited environment, and it has the ability to let you scry if it gets in for damage. So this is going to be the first pick out of this pack. All right, let's move on and open up the other 5 packs. All right, so moving into the other 5 packs, we're just going to go to basically look at the rares and stuff as we open these. I can't believe how hard these are to open. Wow. So we are going to be opening up an Akoum Stonewaker, a Deathless Behemoth, a Coastal Discovery, and a Defiant Bloodlord, which is a spicy looking vampire. Flying, when you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. Interesting. My wife's going to want this for her vampire deck. I'll give it to her later on. All right, pack 3. She has a vampire commander deck built around Anawan the Rune Sage, and yeah, she'll want that Defiant Bloodlord for that. All right, we have in the back of this thing Adrana's Emissary, Encircling Fissure, Horribly Awry, and the rare is, oh, nice, a Canopy Vista. You know, I'm always looking for dual lands. I love me some good rare dual lands. I'll take them in any form I can get them. All right, oh, and a nice full art island I like. Now, is that original Zendikar artwork too? This looks familiar. Did they recycle the original Zendikar artwork? Interesting. Okay, and wow, okay, there we go. All right. Next pack. We're picking up a Plated Crusher. Ooh, Trample Hexproof. Nice. Grove Rumbler, which we actually saw some of these in a deck tech I did a couple of weeks ago around harvest season. All right, Retreat to Valakut. And our rare is the Guardian of Tazim. This is a Sphinx, 4/5 flying. Landfall. When a land enters the battlefield under your control, tap target creature and opponent controls. If it is an island, the creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. So this deck might be swinging in the blue direction based on the handful of Bonnie rares I just have seen so far. Blue might be our primary color. All right, we got 2 packs to go here. We're going to go through this. Another Grove Rumbler, a Rolling Thunder, a Cryptic Cruiser, and the rare is March from the Tomb. A sorcery, return any number of target ally cards with total converted mana cost 8 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Okay, that seems strong if you're in the tribal thing, but probably not for a sealed build. And then the last pack. When we get done with this, what I'm going to do is going to sort everything out, and we'll rate the colors. So Angel of Renewal, Brood Monitor, Molten Nursery, and the rare is called Omnath Locus of Rage, Legendary 5/5 Elemental. When a land enters the battlefield under your control, put a 5/5 red and green elemental creature token onto the battlefield. When the Omnath Locus of Rage or another elemental you control dies, it deals 3 damage to target creature or player. Oh, holy crap. This might not be for my limited build, but this is definitely going into that harvest season deck build that I just did a couple of weeks ago. Are you freaking kidding me? This is really good. I might have to swing back for red. You'll remember I finished that as a mono green build. Okay, anyway, I digress. Let's go sort some cards. All right, after sorting the cards and looking through the assortment, I have ranked them from weakest to strongest according to color. And we'll start as usual with the lands. I have a couple of tap lands. One's in blue, one's in black, that do a couple of other little things, and they're both okay. So we'll just see what kind of a build we get into after that. I do have a Spawning Bed, which I think no matter what happens, I will probably play with this. It just adds a colorless mana to my mana pool, and for 6, I can put 3 1/1 Eldrazi Scion creatures onto the battlefield, and they have, of course, tap to add 1. And then I also have a dual land. So again, depending on how the power level of the colors play out, I could play with this. Even if I just need 1 card from one of these colors, I could splash the Vista in for that 1 card. So that's the land for this card pool. All right, so the weakest color in this pool was white. It had a couple of decent pieces of removal, but both pieces are conditional. So potentially worth splashing for. It did have a nice assortment of flying creatures with the Sentinel, the Glider, and the Griffin, and the Angel, which is actually a little bit on the larger side, 4/4 flying for 6. So, I mean, it did have a good assortment of flyers. but it didn't have anything that I would consider just be a really big, this is going to win you the game bomb, especially when stacked up against the other colors in this pool and stacked up against the size of the other things in this particular set. And outside of that, it rounded itself off with some decent creatures and quite a few of them. So, you know, a lot of filler here if you need it. A combat trick and a fog kind of an effect to round it out. So that was white. So nothing crazy or outstanding, but definitely some good, you know, filler if you need it. All right, next up we have black. Black had good removal in Bone Splinters, and it had one really, what I would consider to be a bomb, again, along with that angel in white. This is a vampire 4/5 flying. When you gain life and a target opponent loses that much life. So you're paying 7 mana for a 4/5 flyer, which is not the greatest, really. But I think my wife will like this for her commander deck. She has an Anawan the Rune Sage commander. Outside of that, another little flyer here that's okay. And then some decent filler, again, in creature, but nothing crazy. A Swarm Surge if you get wide on Eldrazi tokens. A little bit of card draw here, some reanimation, and a discard. So, again, nothing crazy. So I think those are the two weakest colors in this pool. Okay, red had more going for it in the form of removal. I have an Outnumber. I have a Touch of the Void. I have a Rolling Thunder. So I've got some decent removal here in red that's not as conditional as the other colors. And then I have a lot of smaller creatures, just a pile of them. So maybe red is just a hair weaker than the other two that I just showed you, but I think there's enough removal here to be worth considering. So these first three colors are really, I think, a horse apiece. But I think I'm going to get into red, and I'll get into that later. I'll explain that later. All right, now green was very, very solid. Everything in my green card pool is, at the very least, playable. There's not much in the way that if I wanted to run green, I could almost run every single green card I have. This is a nice 2-drop. This is a nice 3-drop, potentially. This is probably the weakest card in green. Eyeless Watcher, this is nice because it gives you Eldrazi tokens as well as its own body. Giant Mantis is just nice to gum up the board, and I have a pair of those. This is a nice 4/3 for 4. Territorial Baloth, 4/4 for 5, but it has landfall, giving it +2. Brood Monitor for 6. It's a 3/3 that gives you 3 Eldrazi's. This guy's a rock star for 7 mana, Trample, Hexproof, and 7/6. This guy's an absolute bomb. Call the Scions is a sorcery that gives you colorless Eldrazi. So I'm seeing some go wide here. Swell of Growth. This potentially lets you play 2 lands per turn and is a combat trick. So that's something to think about if we see some other good landfall. Seek the Wilds. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. Reveal a creature or a land. Put them into your hand. So this will help you with those land drops. So everything in green is playable and it's pretty solid. All right, my strongest color by far was blue. I have flyers for days, some good ones here. The Eldrazi Spawn Broker, which gives me an Eldrazi. The Windrider Patrol, which was my first pick in the pack. 4/3 flying, and it scries if you get damage in. This guy's really, really good. This will help you pin down opponents. 4/5 flying with a landfall that has you tap an opponent's creature. And if that land is an island, that creature stays tapped for a couple of turns. So this is really, really good. So I know I'm going to be probably playing blue, probably playing green. I'm going to try and take advantage of some of this landfall. I have 2 Benthic Infiltrators, which are unblockable, an Incubator Drone, which gives me a Scion, and then some other another kind of filler body. This is a decent counterspell, Horribly Awry for 2. Also another good counterspell, Scatter to the Winds. Later in the game, it could be a counterspell and a creature. Some card draw, lots and lots of card draw, some combat stuff, and a Rush of Ice. This is just more of a hold down the board tempo kind of thing. All right, into colorless stuff. So I get the feeling that this format, when it was being drafted, was a bit of a slower format, just on the size of things that are in here. I have 2 Kozilek's Channelers. They cost 5. They're 4/4. They each tap for 2. I have the Deathless Behemoth, which is actually potentially kind of hard to deal with. 6 for 6/6 and Vigilance. Also sacrifice a couple of Scions and put it from your graveyard into your hand. So he could actually be a little bit difficult to deal with. So definitely worth thinking about. Definitely a bomb. This guy might be a little too high up on the mana curve at 7 for a 7/8 because it's usually what he's gonna be. I don't think in this card mix I'm gonna get to take advantage of the gaining 5 life. Plus, if I've exiled something, why would I want to put it back in my opponent's graveyard? All right, so in multicolor, I wound up with a March from the Tomb, which in this card pool is not playable. Drana's Emissary, which is probably not going to be playable based on the black-white. But I do have Grove Rumbler, and a pair of those, which has a nice landfall ability, giving it +2/+2, and it already has Trample built in. But the main reason I know for sure I'm going red and green is right here. This is an absolute bomb. If this lands and if this sticks to the table and you can play a couple of lands after it, you will probably just win the game outright. So that's my card pool that I'm going to be working with. Pretty sure it's going to be red, green, and blue. Probably heavier on the red and green, or heavier on the blue and the green, and probably just the red will be removal. So yeah, let's go build. Okay, so as I anticipated, the build came out blue, green, and red, but it actually did come out a little heavier on the red than I thought it would. So it's a pretty even mix with the 3 colors, but that's okay. So starting with blue, I'm running an Eldrazi Sky Spawner, which is 2/1 flying, and when it comes into the battlefield, put a Eldrazi token onto play. Then I've got the Incubator Drone, which is a 2/3 for 4. When it enters the battlefield, put a colorless drone, Scion Eldrazi into play. Then I have Windrider Patrol, which I knew I was going to be playing with. Flying for 3 for 5. Combat, if it deals combat damage, scry 2. Then I have Guardian of Tazim, again 4/5 for 5 and flying, and it has this great landfall ability that taps down your opponent's creatures. So I knew I was going to be playing with that. Then I put in both the counter spells. Horribly Awry is nice for holding down the early board state. This deck's going to be a little bit slower to get up and running, so I wanted to just kind of pin things down. So I have Horribly Awry and Scatter to the Winds to help that out. And then I finished off the blue with a little bit of card draw. I have Anticipate, which is this is a nice one. Lets you pilfer through the top 3 cards. And I have Coastal Discovery. Even though it is a sorcery, it does draw you 2 cards, and potentially could draw you 2 cards and be a creature all at once if you want to pay the 6 later on. Okay, moving into green, I played the Eyeless Watcher because I'm trying to get some Scion tokens on the board so I can get into my bigger stuff earlier. So I went ahead and played with the Eyeless Watcher, even though I wasn't that crazy about it at first. Turns out it's actually pretty good. So for 4 mana, you get a 1/1, and then you also get 2 Scion tokens with it, so you get 3 bodies on the table. I did go ahead and run both copies of Giant Mantis because they're just really good at gumming things up. So they have reach and they're at 2/4, so both of those made it in. And then, of course, I absolutely had to play with Plated Crusher. I'd be stupid not to. Trample Hexproof 7/6. That's just going to win games when it hits the table. It's just gonna. Alright, then for some spells, I have Call the Scions for 3 mana. I get to put 2 1/1 Eldrazi tokens onto the board. I have Seek the Wilds, which is more pilfering through my library to get what I need, either a creature or a land, so this will help me maintain some land drops. And that's important because I do have some decent landfall in here with the Guardian, and then also with a couple other things that I'll show you in a minute. And then Swell of Growth, I put this in here because it will potentially let me play 2 lands on one of my turns, as well as it being a decent combat trick. Alright, so moving into red, I have 1 red creature. I wasn't going to play him, but he's just slightly better than what was left in my other 2 colors, so I played him. 2/1 Trample, and he has landfall. Whenever land enters the battlefield, I get +1/+1, or he gets +1/+1, so he's potentially a 3/2 Trampler for 2 most of the time. All right, other than that, the red was going to be removal. I have Touch of the Void for 3 damage. I have Outnumber, which will be good with all the Scions that I'm going to have on the table, or I'm hoping to have on the table. And Rolling Thunder, I should be able to sacrifice some Scions if I need to get this X up where it needs to be. So this is just good removal. And then in multicolor, I went ahead and ran both the Grove Rumblers, because for 4 mana, 3/3 Trample, with that landfall ability, they can be 5/5 trample, which is what they will be most of the time. So they were worth playing. And then, of course, I'm finishing it off with Omnath as far as spells go. So I'm running 18 lands in this deck, which is a little bit more than I normally would run in a sealed pool, but because of the landfall mechanic and the larger size of some of the things, I just wanted to make sure I was hitting land drops every turn. So I start with Spawning Bed, which is I figured I'd play with. It's just pretty versatile. 1 generic mana, but you can sack it later in the game for Scion tokens. And then I did go ahead and play with the Skyline Cascade, because what it does is pin down a creature for a turn, can get a blocker out of your way, so it's good enough. Other than that, it's just basic land. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 islands, 6 forest, and 5 mountain. So that's the build I came up with for this card mix. Let me know what you think. Maybe I should have done something a little different, or you might have done something differently. As always, if you like this video, hit that like button, thumbs up, and subscribe. And until next time.